Hi everyone, welcome back to my home studio. So this is my day 35 and day 36 of my quarantine distraction videos that I'm shooting. This is a two-part video because it was so long I wanted to break it into two parts. In this video I am showing how you can efficiently make a set of bowls that match out of the pinch method. So here are my bowls that I've been doing, and they all four have a little carved and slip trailed little design on it. They all have a foot ring, and they're all approximately the same size, form, and they will be unified by color as well. I show some of the tricks when you're trying to make an efficient set of things to keep in mind and some of the quicker ways that you can work. So if you have not done pinch method, hopefully you find this enjoyable. This is again day 35 and 36, so if you're watching the first part of the video, you're going to see me through cleaning just the rim and the foot ring after the piece is leather hard. 36 is going to be taking the leveled piece and then really cleaning up the outside and finishing it off and putting the design on it. So hopefully you enjoy this. Shoot me any comments below in the comments if you have any questions or have an idea of something else that you'd like to see me work on. I have a running list of some videos that I'm doing. I just wanted to do a few more hand building videos for the people that have been asking me to do some hand building videos. So I hope you all are staying healthy, so stay safe, stay healthy, and keep potting if you can. I usually start my students off in their first level ceramics with pinch method because pinch is among the easiest methods to do. Now, when you go a little bit bigger, sometimes it's a little bit more challenging because you're either making the initial ball of clay bigger or perhaps you're adding a coil. Now, to take it beyond this step of pinch, you could then add a foot ring. So this was an added foot ring. And then you can see that I also added texture with those. You could work on having the edge really level, or you could have something a little bit more organic and wavy, as in this sort of edge. So when you're thinking about doing a set of something, you want to think about how are they going to be stored, say, in a cabinet. So like, do you want to have a set where they stack one on top of the other? Sort of like these wheel bowls that I have. You can see that shape. They just nest right inside one another. They take up a little bit more space because there's a lot of space between those. Or you could think of really wide forms where they sit down into one another. And even this one is not quite that wide. This one is a little bit more shallow, but when you stack them in there, it would go down a little bit deeper than it would, say, on this one because the edge is cutting back in. Now, I am looking at some different forms here. So we want to think about how can I create these different forms? And there is a little trick that I can show you. So you could make a little template out of cardboard or rigid paper. So this template here would reflect that profile. Okay, so imagine the pot would be this tall, okay, and then this is the profile and this is the foot. So what I've done is I've cut a profile for each of these. So there is the number 2, and again, these are sizable bowls here. Here's number 3. It's probably more similar to number 1, except the side is much straighter. It doesn't have the curve to it. And then number 4, which is going to be a wide, flat bowl. So whatever kind of form you want, if you're trying to go for consistency, especially if you're a beginner, you might want to go ahead and create a little template like this so you have that as a guide as you're working. So I did start out with 4 balls that are the same weight, and if you cannot weigh them, like if you don't have a scale, at least make the balls and round them and make them all look so they're really appropriate and the same size. Okay, so let me reverse my camera and we'll get started. First of all, I need to give you a little disclaimer. If you hear chickens in the background, I'm outside on my patio and my neighbor's chickens are going crazy next door. I'm not exactly sure what's going on. I would have waited for them to stop, except it's been going on for several minutes and they haven't stopped yet. Okay, so I have my even balls of clay. I'm going to start out and I'm going to just kind of give you an explanation on the first one, and then I'll do the other ones to match. Now, when you have your nice wedged ball of clay, the first step that you do with pinching is you will stick your thumb in, and I'm a right-handed person, so I'm using my dominant hand to do this. I stick my thumb in and I try to push and wrap my fingers around to the outside. The difficult thing is sometimes if your clay is so thick or large, you can't quite wrap, and that's not a big issue, but it is something that I want to keep in mind. Now, if you see any cracking or seams, blend over those immediately, because if you continue to push with them and you don't address it, those seams, separations, cracks, they get bigger. Now, I switched off my hands to my left every once in a while because I do have a little bit of tendonitis. I'm trying to minimize that by trying to work my hands a little bit more evenly. So as I do this, I keep the pot in my hand as I'm rotating, as opposed to setting it on the table. When I have students set it on the table, they end up by creating a really, really thick bottom. So I want to try to avoid that. And I also don't want to necessarily flatten the bottom at this point. Now, because I can't quite reach around all the way, I can take my fingers on the interior and I'm just pushing against my outer hand. So that's essentially doing the same sort of thing. I'm just rotating it and pushing it against my outer hand. If your clay is really stiff, you might have a difficult time with this. So you want to think about making sure that your clay is soft enough that you can pinch without, you know, really fatiguing your hand terribly. Okay, now let me just show you what I'm planning on doing. I am planning on doing this number 1 profile. So I'm going to have a bowl where the walls are sweeping upward and curved. So this is my profile that I'm going to be going for. So you can see that I have a ways to go, but it gives you a good idea of what I'm trying to accomplish with it. Now, when I'm pinching, I usually try to leave the walls probably about as thick as my pinky. So I could describe that as maybe 3/8 of an inch in thickness. So here I'm just expanding with my fingers on the inside, pulling this outward some, and then blending on the outside with my fingers. Again, anytime you see a crease, blend across that. Now I am working outside, so things are drying way faster than they would be on the interior. So I could occasionally add just a little bit of moisture if I'm concerned. Just be aware that if you're working outside, anytime you have a breeze, sun, really low humidity, it'll dry faster. Okay, now I want my bottom to be a little bit more broad than what I have. Let's see, right there. Okay, so I'm going to kind of push out at the base of the wall. And expanding the top a little bit. Now, I didn't bother to bring a turntable outside with me today because I did want to show you that You don't have to have a turntable to hand build. It's nice and it's helpful, but if you don't have one, you can make do. Like, you could just take a piece of paper. This is just a piece of plastic. You could take an old margarine dish lid, and you could set it on it and rotate on it, and it gives you a nice little surface to work with. Okay, so that's number one for right now. I'm going to set that upside down to stiffen a little bit, and I'll work on the next three. So now I'm just really fast forwarding through pinching the other ones in the same manner. Again, I try to keep my thumb on the inside, fingers on the outside, and then if I can't do that, I can always push against the palm of my opposite hand. Now, occasionally use the little cardboard and reference your template that you have, as I just used on mine, to kind of get the angle of the wall to try to get consistency. The idea on this set is that you want all of them to have pretty much the same appearance in the form, the angle, how round they are. We want to concentrate on keeping things centered and in the middle as I'm pinching. Okay, I have them all pinched. Now I'm just going to gently do a little refinement. And here I'm just trying to refine the form by using a paddle and a combination of a paddle and the stainless steel rib and the stiff green Mud Tools platter rib on the interior. All right, got the inside looking pretty good. I'm not worried about the lumpiness on the outside right now because I can clean that up later, nor am I worried about the edge. So I'm just continuing with all four of these. Again, just trying to get across the whole continuous nature of the form, trying to make them all match together as a set so they look consistent. So at this point, I have all four of them pinched. This probably took me about half an hour to pinch them, and then I've ribbed the interior. I've shaped the outside so they're relatively even in appearance, and now I'm just going to let them sit up and get leather hard. The method that I'm going to do with this is I'm just covering them with a dry towel, and I'm going to leave them for a couple hours. Again, I'm outside, and the humidity is low, and there's a little bit of a breeze, so we'll check them in a little bit and see how they look. Okay, it has been about 90 minutes, and my pots are feeling a little bit better. Still a little bit sticky for the next step, so I'm going to let them go a little bit longer. All right. Now that the pot is stiffening up, I'm going to mark the line by making a jig with my tool. So if I just hold, say, the tip of the needle tool, or any tool really, up against another tool, and I hold it really steady, I can make a nice even line. Now I know this one looks like it's quite a bit lower than the rim. That's because I was using the rim of the shortest bowl as my guide. So excuse me, the shortest bowl that I have, this hits just beneath the rim on that. So this is the shortest one, and you can see it's just hitting just there. So I'll have all those marked, and then I'll be ready to start taking down the rim. Okay, now that the edges are marked, I'm going to make the foot ring that I can attach onto this before it gets too dry. So here I'm just taking a minute and I'm rolling out and preparing my coils for all 4 of the feet for the bowls. When I'm rolling the coils, there is a trick that I'm going to show you next, but I'm just trying to make these all equivalent in thickness, and I'll be trimming them in length. But my goal is just to have them all consistent, so when I put them on, they'll all be about the same height. I've gone ahead and I've prepped some of my coils here for the foot ring, but I wanted to just show you a quick trick, if you've never seen this, on how you can make a coil really round and even. I don't use an extruder because I find that rolling coils is pretty easy. So the first thing that I would do when I'm rolling a coil, of course, is to kind of squish the clay into like that sausage shape. Now, the next step is gently twist the ends of the coil in the opposite direction. So you kind of have like a screw or drill bit kind of thing going on. And then as you roll, make sure that the coil can make a full entire revolution. If it only goes a part of the way around, it will go flat. So I'm going to add a little bit more of a twist every couple of rolls. If your clay is a little bit dry on the surface, obviously you could add just a little moisture there, but mine was okay. But sometimes if you're working with clay that is a little bit dry, maybe you get surface cracking, and that will help result in a nice even coil. So twist the ends opposite, make sure it has a full revolution, and keep your hands moving side to side, pulling it apart. Now, when I make a foot ring, just like if I'm doing a slab, wall of something, I'm going to do a bevel where the ends meet. So this was scored and slipped already on the ends, but when you bevel, when the ends of the coil meet, it's way easier to blend it together, okay? So if I were to make this into the foot ring, and by the way, I had made all of my coils the same length. They're exactly the same length. So if this one I'm cutting to a foot ring, I'm going to cut a bevel on one side. I'm going to do a corresponding bevel that matches. So if you can see, the bevels are the same. So this is the same thing that you would do like on a slab cylinder. You're putting the walls or the ends of the walls together. You're gonna have the same bevel. They're like parallel. The bevels are parallel. Okay, so that way when it comes around, boom, it meets up and it goes together. Okay, now this one I did not measure, so I don't think it's the same length as those. I'm just going to use the ones that I had. Okay, so I'm going to make basically a donut out of each of my coils for all 4 of the cups. As I go to attach the foot ring, I do recommend standing or in some manner getting your eyes over the base of the pot. It's sometimes I think a lot easier for people to center things up when you're getting your head over it rather than just sitting to the side. It's a little bit harder to gauge sometimes. So I've scored both the pot bottom and I scored the foot ring. I only added slip to the one, and now I'm really going to push and engage this. I'm going to blend. You can certainly use your fingers, a tool, whatever you prefer. But I want to make sure that it is smooshed into the wall of the pot really, really well. I want this to be very, very secure. and then interior as well. I'm just using the back side of my finger or my fingernail to blend. You could certainly use a wood tool or a rib, but I'm just trying to have consistency with the application. There we go. So I've got that anchored on. I'm going to go ahead and do the other 3. Same way. And I'm really speeding this along with the attachment, but all the same steps: scoring, slipping, blending when attaching, and trying to make it consistent with the rib. So I get the little curve of at the base of the foot all nice and consistent. Okay, the foot has been upside down. It's been sitting up a little bit, so it's not terribly moist at this point. And the next step that I want to do is I want to level off the edge a little bit. Now, you could do a couple different things. For my students, because they have difficulty with knife and cutting, I often just tell them just Sureform down to the line or use a shredder. I refer to it as Sureforms, but it's a shredder. So I'm going to cut this though to make the action of the Sureform of the shredder a little bit easier. I'm just going to trim this down just shortly above the line. Now, I do know that the foot is not level at this point, so I'm not terribly worried about that. I just want to make the edge even with the line that I drew. So I cut it off a little bit above the line, and then I bring down the edge to the line, so I know that that's going to be level. Now, obviously the walls are very thick at this point. I'm not worried about that because I am going to thin the walls, but I'm still going to let it set up just a little bit more. I'm doing this kind of as an assembly line, just to make it a little bit more efficient with my time. So I've now leveled that off. Same with the next one. And I'm just trimming all of them off just a little bit above the line that I marked, and then I just take it down the rest of the way with the Sureform to the right height. Okay, I just did this. I thought I captured it on the camera, but I didn't. I have flipped up the upside down the bowls, and I've taken and I've marked the bottom of each of the foot rings. I did that because I know that the top is level, so now if the top is level, now I can make the bottoms level and equal to it. And then the last step that I'm doing in the video again is just leveling the bottom. So now I know that the bottom and the top edge are both parallel. They're going to be consistent. It shouldn't be slanted or uneven in any way. And please check out the next video for how I finished these off and cleaned them.